giving me the honor at the point of a gun to let me introduce him. And how many students, how many people here are from my class? Raise your hand. We basically rule this room now, so Ron owes me. And we've got an awesome panel. So I'm introducing Ron. You document it, because it works with the FBI. Raise your hands high if you're in my class. I'm just curious. Has anyone watched the TV show I just learned about it called Person of Interest? Is it awesome? Is it awesome?
It is awesome.
My younger brother was telling me about it. It's Thursday nights. I'm totally
it's good. Watch it.
Yeah. I'm not going to go into it. Apparently, a guy, there are video cameras all over the world, and he has access to all this, and he's constantly chasing people down. He doesn't know if it sounds very interesting. So back to Ron Disco. So Ron, I've known for some years. Ron is a true Jersey boy. He went to Woodbridge High. He got his bachelor's and master's from different Rutgers campuses. He was a government reporter both at the State House in Middlesex County for a number of years for the Home News Tribune. Most importantly, in German or in Yiddish, the man is a mensch, okay? Which simply translated means he's a person, which is a very high compliment in Yiddish or person of interest? No, he's a good guy. And he's the Associate Director of our Journalism Resources Institute. Give it up for Ron Miska.
Thank you, Bob. You're welcome. Thank you. Welcome to the roast. Okay, before I get started, excuse me, I just wanted to thank King Peter Palace for this great food. They did a great job in a slow amount of time. And tonight we were supposed to have Senator Loretta Weinberg, who wasn't able to come tonight, but she sent her representative instead. But earlier I had noticed that, I had been told that her birthday is today. So we were going to surprise her with this cake, which I want to show you. I don't know if we have to do that, but we have this beautiful cake made. So I don't see any reason, unless you do, not to eat it. Okay? So we have a knife guy from King Peter Palace who's going to cut it for us. And on your way out, you can take a slice and have a little conversation outside. This is Scott Devlin is going to show you. Okay. Oh, and it's good too. I just got a little spear. Don't forget to eat. So, good evening, everybody. I am Ron Miskoff, and tonight's panel is called Technologies Across Borders. How has technology affected open government, and where will it go from here? It's a big topic, but we have people who can poke around at the answer, I think. I'll introduce them in a minute. Tonight is actually a look at the state of open government in New Jersey, and particularly about where the Open Public Records Act, which we will call OPRA, and the Open Public Meetings Act, which we'll call OPMA, stand, particularly in relation to technology. Our panelists have changed since the flyer went out. Professor Suzanne Piotrowski, who's an expert in open government from Rutgers Newark, had to cancel because of a medical problem. We have John Paft and Walter Loers have come. Unfortunately, we lost Senator Weinberg, but I was able to obtain a clone who's sitting on the panel tonight. John Paft is a well-known citizen activist who has sued local governments to get open records. He's filed so many lawsuits against so many municipalities that he was once in front of a judge who was fed up with John's endless objections. And the judge said, "Just what have you done for humanity?" And John said, "I've kept 4 lawyers clothed and fed." And Walter Lures is the president of the Foundation for Open Government.
And one of the 4 lawyers.
And an attorney who specializes in Oprah law. He has spoken at Rutgers before, and tonight he returns for a chance to be undefeated, which is also the way he is in court, almost. He got into handling Oprah cases after he spent some time as a criminal lawyer. One of his clients was convicted of murder and was about to go to the electric chair. And he asked Walter for some last-minute advice, and Walter said, "Don't sit down."
I thought all lawyers were criminals.
And we also have Josh Rosenau, who was a very late entry, replaced Suzanne. He's a former student of mine, a 2012 Rutgers Journalism and Media Studies graduate. And he's now drinking, so you know which one he is. I want to thank him. Thank you, Josh, for replacing Suzanne. Since graduating, he's written for several publications. He's a staff writer for he was a staff writer, right, for the Trenton Times. He covered state policy, crime, healthcare, education, and other topics. And currently, he works as an investigative and enterprise reporter for Strauss News and its 9 weekly newspapers covering areas in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. I think they're mostly up in the northwest corner of New Jersey. Okay, and we also have Scott Devlin. We can call him Loretta tonight because he's replacing Senator Weinberg. Scott is currently the legislative director for Assemblyman Gordon Johnson. Before working for Assemblyman Johnson, he served as legislative director to Senator Weinberg for 5 years. He has a bachelor's in political science from Ramapo College, a master's in public administration from Rutgers, and he has worked on Oprah and Oprah bills since their inception in 2008. You mean the revisions of Oprah, right?
Yes.
Okay. And I myself am a former president of the Foundation for Open Government, so I have a little background in open government, and I'm also an instructor here at Rutgers in journalism. So each panelist will have a chance to open with a statement about open government, Oprah, OPMA, or whatever is related, talk about your kids, whatever. I'll drop in questions here and there, and anyone in the audience could pose a question for any of the panelists. And since the topic is open government and technology, we'll talk about, in part, and I hope the panelists will stick to this, some of the scientific advances that have changed our government. We usually don't think about it much, but things change rapidly. The way things were done a generation ago with pencils and paper and typewriters have vastly changed. Now it's computers and smartphones and iPads. These conveniences, which in no small way have changed our lifestyle, have also either contributed to or reduced our access to what government is doing. And we should talk about that tonight. For example, our reliance as a society on names and passwords has led to massive identity theft, which in turn has led to the state of New Jersey's being quite leery of releasing people's telephone numbers in public documents and even their addresses. Journalists find this confounding because if a reporter is trying to find out if someone is the same person who, say, committed a crime, there will sometimes be fewer or sometimes no way to find out. So technology, in effect, has put that out of reach. But technology has also given us great toys, like Excel and Access, which enable us to take information from municipalities or the state and find out interesting and often important things about the murder rate, the tax rate, the budget, population shifts, and 100,000 other things that enable journalists to do better jobs. Yet there have been court cases in which some local governments have refused, at least initially, to provide this information that can be fed into a spreadsheet. So there are some controversies out there. So let me introduce the panelists from left to right. We have on your right is Walter Lures. And then next to him is Scott Devlin, then John Path, and Josh Rosenau. So which one of you would like to begin? How about you, John? You,
I can start.
I usually poke you and you can talk for a while. So
I usually can. There's a fundamental difference between government entities and private businesses when it comes to embracing technology. I know that I can go on the computer at 4 o'clock tomorrow morning and I can find out how much money I charged on my Discover card between April 26, 2008 and April 29, 2008 in about 30 seconds. And the reason I can do that is because Discover card wants to make it convenient for me because I'm their customer. They want to make me happy. They want me to use their products and services. So they embrace technology to make it easy for me and their other customers to get information. Government doesn't have customers in the same way. It's not as if I'm unhappy with the way Franklin Township keeps its meeting minutes, because they keep them in a book as opposed to putting them online, for example, that I can say, well, I'm not going to pay the taxes that are due this quarter. I mean, they don't really care. They're not motivated to please the customer because their customers, I guess their citizens, are more or less captive. And also, some government entities are actually hostile and try to purposely suppress information because they really just don't want citizens to know what it is. So I've been thinking about tonight's theme, and I come to the conclusion that the best way I can explain it is that to the extent that government agencies are wanting to provide information, there are some that truly do embrace open government. A township wants to provide information to its citizens in an easy and a convenient format. Technology is a huge advance, and it makes things much, much better. But for those government agencies, like some of them I'm not going to name but can think of right off the top of the head, that actually actively suppress information, the availability of technology standing by itself is not really going to make them any more accountable to the public. What it's going to take are things like in the Open Public Meetings Act bill, they require them to post certain things on their websites. And they have to be told what to do. They have to be drug kicking and screaming into the 21st century. Just for an example, the New Jersey Superior Court system. You might think that they do have a computer system, and you might think that you could go to their computer database and query it and say, I would like to have all the personal injury cases that are coded as personal injury for the period of time in 2005 and 2006 where the county of venue equals Camden and the last name of a plaintiff begins with P. You would think, and like we're used to databases, we're people that have grown up in probably the 80s and the 90s or well before that for me, but we've learned that databases can do these sorts of things easily. That's why we call them databases. We don't call them data pits, because you're able to get data out of them in a meaningful way. If you ever wanted to marvel at something, ask the New Jersey Superior Court to take its ACMS system and produce any kind of a meaningful report out of it. And you will be told bluntly that our system can't do that. We can't get information to order out of our database unless we write a customized program to extract this data. So what New Jersey Fog did, which I remember was president, we had to pay upwards of $700 in order to have one of these custom reports drawn up so that we could get information out of it so that we can track court cases and find out what's going on in the courts.
New Jersey Fog.
New Jersey Fog, Foundation for Open Government. And it's kind of an odd name, FOG would imply the opposite.
John, maybe you should explain what do you need this information for?
Well, you need it for a lot of things. Like if you look at the court cases sequentially, you go docket number by docket number, you're going to find that most all of them are personal injury cases, medical malpractice cases, slip and fall cases, things that are not generally of great interest to activists and journalists. The cases people are interested in are things like civil rights cases, law against discrimination cases, defamation cases, assault and battery cases maybe, or things where one of the parties of the case is likely a government actor that may have done something wrong. But you can't filter those cases using the software or using the database. You just simply cannot extract that information out of the database that they have. You have to, we had to create a custom database and text file, put it together, and now we have something that we work with. But the problem is it's getting older. It's now probably almost a year old, so a lot of the information is not up to date. But this is an example, and my point is that if the government was actually trying to serve its citizens and help them, you wouldn't have these problems. The database would be something like Microsoft Excel database that you could have your data maps, you could pull things in and you could calculate it and look at it any way you want, filter it and sort it, whatever. then this is a recurring theme throughout government, is people are still doing things the way they were in the 80s and the 90s, even though there is computer technology that would greatly aid in the process.
John, are you saying, and it sounds like, I don't mean to interrupt too much, but it seems to me what you're saying, or sort of textually what I'm picking up is, they want to let people have access, and so they say, well, you know, it's a database, it's complicated, you got to go to a lot of trouble, but it wouldn't be that big a deal, they can make it available to everybody. Be easier ultimately, but they don't want people to do it.
Well, yeah, well, what they've done is, I don't know if you might be right that this is a matter of what it's designed to do. I don't know that, but I do know that what they do is they have the databases, and they write up custom reports for these databases that serve their needs. They'll have a report on the number of dollars the municipal court brought in Franklin Township, because this is the kind of stuff they need to report on. But they haven't written any reports or keep any on file that would permit people to get information in a way that's meaningful to the public. And the only thing that I can say as far as their motive is, I asked them this question directly. I said, if we pay the $700 to have this routine written, this subroutine written that can extract this data, could you pretty please save it on a floppy disk someplace? If you see one of these floppies, maybe a CD-ROM someplace, so the next time when we ask for the same data, maybe a year from now, that we will be able to use the work that was already done and perhaps save some money. And they said, no, our policy is simply, we don't keep them. We will destroy and delete them as soon as they're executed once. Now that, you could draw an inference from that, in my view, that's sort of mean-spirited, because now we have to go back and pay another $700 to get the same.
Why do you think they're so uncooperative?
Well, that's a dangerous question to ask the libertarian. I'm not really, I don't know why. I think part of the reason is they can. I don't know why the Superior Court would have any particular reason to want to keep this information out of the hands of people, unless maybe they don't like the idea of people, maybe they're concerned that it will spawn more records requests. If people can get data they can use, and they can start saying, well, oh, I want this one, and I want this case, and I want to compare them, and I want to see this and that, maybe that'll end up being more work for the people that have to respond to the records requests. That might be their motivation. I really have no idea.
Okay. Walter, you want to go next?
Well, what I find interesting about technology is that the problem is, especially at the municipal level, is that the application of technology is done on a very ad hoc basis. That is, it depends a lot on the individual capabilities of the town that you're dealing with. So, for example, if you want emails, or if you want payroll data, or if you want documents in an electronic format, whether or not you get the documents in electronic format, whether or not you get them cheaply, depends a lot on the information technology capabilities of the town. And there's over 500 towns and boroughs, and then there's another several hundred school boards. And that's not fair. It's not fair that a resident in one town can have an easier time getting access to emails and to data because that town's information officer is better or more better equipped, or maybe the town is a little larger, it's a little more mature in terms of its capabilities. It's not fair that the citizen in that town will have an easier time getting access to data than a citizen in another town that maybe isn't doing as good of a job keeping up with technology, or maybe doesn't have the same type of capabilities. One of my anecdotes I like to share is I had a situation where my client wanted 3 years worth of checks, every single check, written by the New Jersey Lottery. New Jersey Lottery is like a $1 billion division. So there's a tremendous amount of data. It was probably hundreds of thousands of transactions. But because the lottery uses a tremendous amount of technology in its operations, we said to them, well, look, can you guys just run a program, charge us some money, and capture all this data and give it to us on a text file and a couple of CDs? And that's exactly what they did, and it cost like $700 for what must have been hundreds of thousands of transactions. Now, most municipalities, we wouldn't be able to have that kind of scalability. Most municipalities say, well, we have to convert it, there has to be a special service charge. If a third party has the data, well then the charge might be based on whatever the agreement is, and that's not right. there need to be standards in where data is stored. There need to be standards in how data is stored. There need to be standards in how data is accessible. And right now, no standards exist, and to the extent any are being created, they're being created on an ad hoc basis when individuals make requests or through litigation.
Okay. Maybe Josh, you want to chime in there and talk about, are you not done?
For the question.
What about DARM? What's the role of it? I thought they set regulations, the records of the state. Can you explain what that is?
Well, the Division of Archives and Records Management is a division of, thank you. It's a division of the state that regulates the time periods during which public agencies must retain documents. Some documents you have to keep for 90 days, some documents you have to keep forever, and there's a range in between. But the question was, aren't these standards, proposed by DARM, aren't these standards set by DARM? Unfortunately, no. DARM sets the retention schedules. So you have to retain meeting minutes for 3 years or permanently. But they don't say you have to retain your payroll record in electronic format. They don't characterize that. And I'm not aware of any state agency that does. So it doesn't mean it's not out there. I'm just not aware of it.
I do know that DARM does have some policies that are like you have to keep your electronic records in certain temperature controls, and you have to have your records subject to certain sort of environmental conditions. But also I know that DARM doesn't have any enforcement mechanism at all. I know that because there was an agency, and I believe it was the Keep Board, New Jersey, that was keeping its business, they have one of those business districts, which is a government entity, that was keeping its records in cardboard boxes in this unlocked boathouse down by the shore. And I mean, the records were like the wind would blow in and the rain would blow in, and the records were just, if they weren't already in terrible shape, we're going to get there. And I went to DARM and I said, you can't do this. I mean, this is against your policies, and I quoted the policies. And they said, well, yeah, you're right. He says, what we are limited to do is if people calls us up for us to give them some advice on how they should obtain their records, we'll certainly be happy to provide that. But we have no enforcement authority to tell them that they have to. So to the extent that there are such things, that's a lot of the problem, is a lot of the agencies and a lot of the people in the state government really have little enforcement authority or little enforcement willingness to actually make things better.
Quick question. I'm a professor, so I'm protected. Maybe your students are response first, so they know they get missed something. You're all great gentlemen, very smart, but I recommend some of us like me don't know what these acronyms are that you're using. So I said, can they explain what DARM is? So I mean,
No, I understand. I think Walter said that. He says the Division of Archives and Records Management. I think it's within the, is part of the, somehow associated with the State Records Council. And I believe it's in Treasury. I'm not sure where it actually is, but its main purpose is to keep a way in which records, a standardized way in which municipal and county and school board, all types of government agencies are required, what records they're required to keep, and how long they're required to keep them.
Yeah, and we use it in the investigative reporting class because sometimes the student will want a certain type of record but doesn't know the name of the record. And the way OPRA is set up, if you don't know the name of the record, they don't have to give it to you. Like one student once asked for the records budget, and they said, sorry, no such document exists. And it turns out the document is actually called the financial statement. Who knew? So when we go to DARM, which is online, you go under the state of New Jersey and it's all there, it lists every possible document that a government agency is supposed to keep, birth certificates or whatever it might be, and how long. We don't really care how long, as long as we're in that range of time when we're supposed to keep it, and then we can go to records and open a record that way. That's how it works. Okay, Josh, you wanted to react to what Walter was saying about the problem of reporters obtaining this information.
Sure. I mean, also, I'd like to respond also to John's point about the inability of clerks and other government workers to effectively parse information that should be a fairly easy task to complete at the state of the technology that we have now. That is a common problem. I would say it's in fact the norm. And I would also say that it's interesting listening to you guys speak about this stuff because as someone who works with this stuff every week, I'm working on a story right now that is going to involve me filing an Oprah request of some kind. It's very interesting that the culture and attitude of the clerk's office, of the government, of the local municipal workers that you are going to hand that request to and that know what your organization is, their attitude about the request as they receive it is going to greatly determine whether it gets fulfilled or not. It's not simply about your ability to specify the request. I mean, in some cases it is. You'll be able to get a request fulfilled faster if it's more specific. But I would say that on general requests, similar to the one that you were suggesting from the court, where you're looking for a generalized document that has certain points of interest that you'd like to use as a sort, maybe you'll find a clerk that's interested to fill that. It might be that he or she has an interest in the document themselves, or that they view it as a challenge or something.
Social consciousness.
Yeah, or a willingness to work with the press. Other times that is met with complete scrutiny. It's a no first and a yes later. And I think that imposing some sort of standard about the efficacy of technologies that the state not only uses, but we're paying for that stuff, okay? So when a government or a government agency enters into a contract to bid for IT services that are effectively non-functional for the people outside them trying to use them, that's a disservice. And it's one that is easily solved today. I mean, I think it's harder to find technologies that don't work well than it is to find technologies that work well.
Okay, next we'd like to hear from Scott, but before you do, Scott, we were hoping again that Senator Weinberg would be here. We actually had like a makeshift birthday card for her. Would you like to hold that up?
Yes.
Stand up.
I guess this is
Yeah, we redacted the, let's see the next.
I think that the transparency technology will increase transparency by making data more available. I mean, I've heard from these people that either have some capacity employees or technology right now doesn't work particularly well. But I think that the arc is long and but I think that as technology increases, I think that transparency will also increase. First off, by reducing costs of bureaucracy. I feel that if you give maybe some of these bad clerks you were talking about, you can say, hey, if you put this online, you won't really have to deal with over requests, or people will be less likely because they should be online. That may lead them to just put more information online, which would be helpful because you don't have to file over requests. They don't have to wait the 7 days. And you, as Mr. Pat was talking about, go 4 a.m. in the morning to look at your local list of records. I think that putting data online or increasing the amount of data doesn't reduce the need, but actually will increase the need for investigating journalists and skilled analysts to go through it, because even if you have this treasure trove of data and numbers, it's going to do a real, do a real muckraking story. You're still going to need people who know the lay of the land, who know, oh, they're buying salt from this company. well, that person's brother is this, who's related to this, who has a pack that is this. You need someone who's kind of on the ground talking to people, off the record and on the record, to make those connections to make the meaning of a journalistic story. So just because there's more data out there is good, but the analysis and the behind the scenes, knowing that it's on the ground knowledge that is going to be for journalism. And I mean, even as transparency increases, as you're saying, there's still going to be some bad actors out there, but I think transparency overall will, that the technology overall will increase transparency as we go.
Can you tell us a little bit, Scott, about the new proposed legislation that Senator Weinberg has? I understand it's coming on the floor of the Senate tomorrow?
Yes, that's correct. So this bill I've been working on for quite some time. Basically, since 2008, since I started with Senator Weinberg, it's now 4 years ago. It was 3 legislative sessions ago.
Excuse me? I'm sorry, could you move the microphone a little bit closer to you?
So I've worked on this bill for quite some time, since 2008. Martin O'Shea, who the bill is named after, has since passed away. So we started working on it, he's alive, and now he's passed away, which is a description of the length of time that we've worked on this bill. So we've gone through so many variations and iterations, I won't bore you with all the technical knowledge and acronyms and all that stuff like that. But let me talk about how this bill has, how technology and this bill, which changes the Open Public Records Act and Meetings Act. So first off, one of the reasons for the bill is the fact that technology has changed significantly. The Open Meetings Act was last reformed in 1975. I'm not even sure if the internet existed then. And you have the Open Records Act, which was passed in 2001, 2002. So even then, things have changed. There was just things like tweets, text messaging was particularly popular. So you have these technology has come such a long time, and we needed to update the laws to account for that. So some of the things are simple in the bill. I had talked about you need to send your agendas to newspapers. So we talked about telegramming them to newspapers. No one sends telegrams anymore. I realized. And we also say you can email them. You can fax records requests. You can, another part of the bill talks about it prohibits members of the public body that had public meeting voting on things. They can't text each other about stuff that's on the agenda. You don't want to have one council member texting you, hey, I'll vote this way if you vote that way, having this discussion at the public body. Whereas in 1975, that wasn't a possibility. They couldn't do that. So we have part of this is to update the bills to account for the new technology. Some of it's topical changes, and some of it's substantive changes like printing and texting. And what we also want to use, as I was talking about before, use technology to make government more transparent by putting things online instead of going through the records requests. So in the bills, they have to post meeting minutes, meeting agendas, ordinances, things like that online so that they're easily accessible to members of the public. They don't have to go through their records request process. And I feel that this will also help municipal clerks who, you guys talk about so burdened and don't want to give out this information. It's online. It's easier for everyone to get to. And so what we say is, in the bill, we're going to have the Department of Treasury is going to help municipalities and other government agencies by providing them with a way to easily put financial data online, so that you have financial data instead of being in a lockbox in the bottom municipality that costs $500 special service fee to get to. There's going to be a way for the clerk or whoever to use this program, get it all online, and which will reduce the records questions they have to deal with. And so I think in the bills we're using technology as a force multiplier in a way to make things more transparent, as well as updating the law to account for new technology.
Is there funding attached to the bill? Because I've testified a couple times in training, even if I have them pretty clear on our legislation, say they don't want to do but they don't, for cynical. But there may be a cost involved for certain municipalities to say, well, we need more money in order to hit this standard, right? So is there money attached? And when there's money attached, now all kinds of other stuff is. And I'd like to know, do many other states have a state standard? And are we way behind the curve on this?
I can't answer for the other states just because I don't know offhand. and I'm not saying something that's incorrect. So in the bill, it's not required, municipalities and colleges, whoever, they don't have to put all their stuff online. What we're doing, we give, when the bill, there's $100,000 in the bill to the Treasury to help create the software, and to easily publish the information online. So we're not saying you have to. It's saying, like, here are the tools you need to make things more transparent, to make your lives easier, and the citizens' lives easier. So, though we're not requiring it right off the bat, we are giving the tools that they need with a $100,000 appropriation to the department to...
So the money goes to someone at the state level, not at the municipal level?
No, so the money goes to the state, and what that'll do is it'll give them the, I guess, the money and administrative help that they need to make the software tools available to the municipalities.
So you think once that's done, that a municipality might not, could they be legitimately say, well, look, we need $20,000 to get our records up and ready to do this. We can't do it without some money. Would that be legitimate for the municipality to say?
They may say that, but I think they'll also look at the cost-benefit analysis. I mean, if you have these evil clerks that don't want to do records requests, so, I mean, if they're like, well, I can start putting stuff online using this easy software and not have to deal with that, maybe they'll start doing that. So, and also, I think if you put it there, you have organizations like the Foundation for Open Government and Citizens Campaign, things like that, who will go to their elected officials and clerk and say, hey, there's this software out there, it makes it really easy to put all your bills and your vouchers and, you know, stuff online. Why don't you start doing that? I mean, in the sense of the people talking, I think that they'll be responsive to the public, especially if it's a groundswell local.
It will help you pass the bill. I know you can't do it overnight, but if you're the representative, the person that you work for, Gordon Johnson, is that his name?
Yes, I work for Senator Gordon Johnson.
I think if you guys, gals, could argue that there are 14 or 27 states that do have a state standard and they're doing it, and we're lagging behind, that's going to be a powerful form of argument rather than say, well, I don't know if there are any other states that do this. You guys need to find that out if I may say so. Don't you think?
What do you mean by state standard?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by state standard?
Well, aren't you trying to, you're not calling for a standard, you just want to create some software for them?
It's a software
It's a
program.
software program that any municipality can use. Is that what you're saying? That's what.
Yeah,
But see, in the early part of the discussion by other parties, I got the impression that ideally, the municipalities differ a lot. Ideally, there'd be a bill that would say every municipality minimally has to hit some standard of openness. That's not what you guys are trying to do.
No, they will not be required to put, well, there is, I mean, I'm going to say yes. So if you have a website, you will have to put your meeting agendas online. You'll have to put your minutes online, ordinances, and that's all I can think of off the top of my head. So yes, you'll have to put that stuff online. But as for the deeper question for financial records, which a lot of people go for because that's where the money is, those we're not saying we're not telling you you have to put the financial records online. Yes.
On one hand, you've got intentional obstructionism or transparency. On the other hand, you've got incompetence. And then you've got sleight of hand. Senate 1451, which Senator Weinberg sponsored, was substituted on the floor of the Senate that day, and it contains changes from the previous bill that nobody had access to because it was a substitution on the floor of the Senate. The change that I find most troubling is that at the core of a citizen's ability to get his or her government to respond to him in a meaningful fashion is the ability for the attorney to take the case, go into court, and the prevailing party then receives the legal fees from the losing party. The bill that was substituted at the last minute changes the shall to a may. And in my estimations, that's the intention of the whole thing.
Yes.
And that was Senator Weinberg's bill, sponsored by her, substituted at the last minute with her permission.
Okay, before you answer that, let me explain what, to some people who aren't plugged into what that means, okay? In some laws, if you hire a lawyer to sue the government and you win, you still have to pay your lawyer. And And the reason that Oprah is such a powerful bill is because if you hire a lawyer to get a document, and usually the lawyer will know when you go to the lawyer and you say, well, I asked for this document and they said they don't have it. And the lawyer says, well, I know they're supposed to have it. I know we could win this case. And the lawyer will then take the case because they have this thing called a fee shifting provision, which means the lawyer's fee will be awarded to the lawyer, which means the government agency has to pay it if they lose, which they probably will. Okay? Now, the law says the agency shall pay that money. And what this gentleman is saying is that it's changing the new law where it says the losing agency may pay depending on the judge. The judge may order it and say, yes, you pay, or in this case, no, I don't think you did such a good job, you pay your own lawyer. Which means a lot fewer people will then go to court against these various levels of government, and it will be a blow for citizen activism. Okay, so that explains that.
I'm aware, I spoke to Mr. Lewis also. Opposed to that change, it's, a lot of people are opposed to that particular change. What I want to say is that we've had opposition to some cases in which judges feel hamstrung that they have to give attorney's fees, and that there should be more judicial discretion in the awarding of attorney's fees. And that, for example, in cases of where there's a technical violation, I would say maybe the records custodian was on sick for a week and then they didn't get it done until 2 or 3 weeks later, but they still sue. And here they wind up with their documents, but it's just late and then they're still forced to pay attorney's fees. That is the kind of thing that the Senator wanted to.
Does the mere threat of the suit ever get a municipality? So it doesn't go to court and they settle out of court and say, okay.
Oh, yes.
All the time.
We're giving you the document.
Yeah, because you have the Government Records Council, which is kind of the body that's. So you have, so in Oprah you have custodians are supposed to, if they can't get the records or it's going to take too long, they're supposed to come to it says the lawyer's supposed to.
I want to make sure I understand. Did you just say that this change was made in a substitution bill without public advertisement of any kind, without public input of any kind, with the senator's permission?
Yes.
So she agreed to weakening this bill as it came before the Senate at the last minute?
Yeah, and I wouldn't say it was at the last minute. I mean, we made the substitution.
No, that substitution was last minute. The bill was presented to the Senate in its form that had been advertised and promoted by Senator Weinberg. That morning, it was yanked, and this bill was substituted. And then it was voted. It was a matter of hours. The substitution and the vote. You're saying she nestled under?
The bill did not pass, and it never passed.
Yes, it did. 37-0.
That was a vote on the amendments, but the bill itself did not pass the full Senate. So what I'm saying is that we 37 senators voted to change the bill, but 37 senators did not vote to move the bill forward and send it off to the Assembly.
So where is this 1451 right now?
I mean, I don't want to get into the weeds. So what happened with the acronyms and things. So what happened is the bill was supposed to be voted on, and the sub was made, and I think that was in November, right? I believe it was in November, if my date's correct. In December, the bill was on an agenda to be voted on, and then it was supposed to be voted on December 16th, I believe. It was held then for more changes. And so what the Senator decided to do is introduce a new bill, S-2511, S-2512, which are substantially similar to the two old bills, had a few changes, maybe a lot of technical changes. One substantive change about public comment periods, another substantive change about public comment periods and subcommittees. A substantive change about subcommittees. The bills are reintroduced. They have new numbers of S-2511, S-2512, and now they are on second reading.
I think that regardless of whether it was quickly done or done at the last minute or done, the public got no way. I mean, I pay as close of attention to these things as I can. I know Bob does too. It just seems a little striking of how little transparency there is in the legislative process when we're dealing with a bill that is intended to promote transparency. One of the problems is that this, to me, is I've been a supporter of this bill until this provision has come in. I used to be a wholehearted supporter of 3712, and I'm now. There are some good things about the bill that I like to see in there, but when you change that shall to a may, that's a big deal. I've been in most of the courthouses around this state, and I've seen judges that are pretty hostile toward the award of attorney's fees. They don't like to do it. A lot of these judges, I don't know why, but they just don't want to issue attorney's fees. And if you have a bill, if OBRA was passed in 2001 and it contained the may language in it, like a lot of other bills, and I hear the argument, well, you know, the law against discrimination, this bill, that bill, they all have may and it seems to work out okay. Well, that's because they were created that way. They never had a shall in them in the first place. They changed it may. The inference is that, you know, now it was shall, we intend, the legislature is saying, to have fewer people get paid their attorney's fees and usually get paid under the other bill. Now, allegedly, there are these people who are winning these court cases that are just on these technicalities, according to what I understand, that are somehow draining and bleeding the system. I have no evidence. I know of no court case, and I think I pay about as close of attention as anybody in the state to anybody suing a municipal government. Let's say the records request is due in 7 days, and on the 8th day they have a hair trigger, they file a lawsuit and say, well, we got the record, we want the fees. I don't see that happening. What I do see is a likelihood of happening is a lot of people like me and other records requesters around the state, we don't have the money to go against the city of Newark. We don't have the money to go against these guys. They've got inexhaustible resources to pay their politically connected attorneys to fight us for access to records. And I have to go to a lawyer like Water Lawyers or Rick Gutman and say, well, you take this case. I'm maybe a little crazy about open government, but I'm not going to sink $5,000 into a lawsuit in order to get some meeting minutes out of the city. Nobody can. It's not cost effective to do that. You need to have the attorney saying to you, well, that's a strong case, John, I'll take that case. On the come line, on where they're putting themselves out there and collecting it like a contingency. If I win, I get paid. If I don't win, I don't get paid. If you have it where now that lawyer has to include in his calculus the fact that, well, even if I win, I still might not get paid if the judge decides that I shouldn't get paid. Well, that changes the whole thing, and you're going to see a very, I think, a marked decline in the amount of attorney's fees that are awarded, and thus, correspondingly, the number of people that are able to fight against the government who's withholding the information. So I will say publicly now that I'm opposed to Senator Weinberg's bill, and I think that I hope that what's happened here is that she didn't, somebody used the word knuckle under to the League of Municipalities, that what she did was she mistook the tremendous impact that this has on the availability of records of citizens who need them, and the far-reaching effects that this is going to have. And I hope if Senator Weinberg hears this, is being recorded, or if somebody wants to take my comments to her, that she has, by allowing this change to be made, to have done a disservice to open government. And I don't mean to insult her, I don't mean to degrade her, but I do think she's made an error. And I hope that she will see to it that it's corrected.
John, this is all new to me. It's all new to me. Reasonably capable of listening to the argument. And before you said what you said, the difference between may and shall is enough in terms of my limited understanding. Unless there's some other really good things in this bill, if I was a legislator, I would absolutely vote against it. Because I think it gives people the illusion that something good was done when actually
it could be a step back. Now, it remains to be seen. If the bill passes in current form, it could be that an appellate court somewhere defines the may and puts some guidelines and guideposts on it so that it turns out that the people that are not abusing the system generally do get paid their attorney's fees.
Does the appellate court ever do that?
I don't know.
John, who's going to take that case?
I don't know. See, I think that what I would like to see is I would like to see somebody demonstrate that there truly is somebody abusing the system out here, but we need to have. I mean, to me, it's pretty simple. Citizen makes a request for records. Government denies it. Government turns out to be wrong and has to give the records, meaning they should have given the records to citizen in the first place, right? There isn't a whole lot of technicality or brain surgery going on here. They either improperly denied the record, they didn't. The citizen has to go battle them out in court and they win, they ought to get paid their attorney's fees. And anything less than that is going to invite some of the more ornery government agents to withhold the record, saying, well, take your role in court. From our point of view, if we lose, well, we got some guy that will take care of it on a taxpayer dime. And in the case you win, well, maybe you won, so maybe that'll dissuade you from taking the case. I've done this for about 20 years, and I know how these guys play. Not all of them are playing straight shooting. Okay, a lot of them are looking to undermine and to disrupt the flow of information, because they've got their own private businesses that they call local governments running at full steam, and they want to keep it running just that way. So let's be real here. You change that to May, and we're going to have a problem. I don't know where that got, I don't know how that got in there, but I think it was a mistake. Maybe somebody got to the senator and got her ear and said, this isn't really going to make any difference. It'll be a huge concession. The league will support the bill. I don't have any evidence that the league is now supporting the bill. As far as I'm concerned, they're still against it, I think. So I'm not sure what she got for that concession. I'm not sure why she made it. I would certainly like to know why.
I don't know, I'm sure she's a wonderful person who made a birthday cake. She's probably got a good excuse. I'm starting to wonder, without knowing enough, maybe she didn't want to come here tonight.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as to say that. But
I don't know that. I'm just saying maybe she knuckled under and she knows that she screwed this thing up and she doesn't want to face some public discourse.
One thing that I would suggest in a positive vein would be that the language, if there really are these ornery cases that are leading municipal governments unfairly out of their attorney's fees, the bill should read something like this. Attorney fees shall be paid unless the court makes a specific finding that the requester abused the system, the requester asked for records you already have, the requester filed a quick lawsuit on the 8th business day, or some other thing that would indicate some sort of an abuse on the part of the requester, but to at least give the court some guideposts so that it can follow in order to not just give them unbridled discretion, because some of the judges I've seen, I mean, I'll tell you now, the way this works too, is you got one judge, the Oprah judge, usually the assignment judge in the county, hears all the Oprah cases. So if you have a judge, let's just say you have a judge that handles a vicinage like Cumberland, Salem, and Gloucester County, is hostile toward the award of attorney's fees in Oprah cases. Well, that pretty much immunizes every municipality and school board within those 3 counties to say, hey, it's fair game on the records requester. It isn't like you get different judges all the time. You get the same person. So this is particularly onerous, and hopefully this will be corrected during this legislative session.
I wanted to ask Walter, it also seems like if the May comes in, would that slow down the precedence that attorneys representing clients have been able to set at the GRC and at the court level, because it also is slowing down the ability of those clients to retain you and your interest in helping them because the probability is there?
Potentially. Right now, the way the 2 laws are set up is that there is fee shifting available under the Open Public Records Act, but there's not fee shifting available under the Open Public Meetings Act. And so what you see is that in the 40 years since the Open Public Meetings Act was passed, a great deal of the act is not fleshed out through decisions and case law. We're still getting Supreme Court cases that are interpreting sections of the Meeting Act that probably would have been interpreted a long time ago if there was fee shifting. And so the body of case law is much smaller for the Meetings Act than it is for the Records Act. And so regardless of which side you're on, the law has developed in a much more sophisticated manner, in a faster manner, with respect to the Records Act, because there's money behind it. And that's the fact of life.
Just recently, there was, when I say recently, a year or so ago, there was a case where a Rutgers alumnus took the Board of Governors to court and said that they had closed the meeting, then opened it, then closed it, and made it quite inconvenient for people to attend. And the court sided with him, but only because the alumnus had enough money to pay for his lawyer. And
Is this McGovern?
What?
Is this McGovern?
Yeah.
McGovern, first of all, McGovern was pro se. So McGovern did not have a lawyer. There were people who filed amicus briefs on his behalf. McGovern himself was pro se. He did not have a lawyer. Second is that some of the issues that the Supreme Court decided, that the McGovern case is the case I was thinking of when I said that we're still getting Supreme Court cases today that we really should have gotten 20 and 30
Right, that's
years
what I'm
ago.
saying. So that's like one of the few cases that have come out of the Open Public Meetings Act because they don't have this provision in it. See, whereas the Open Public Records Act does, and there have been scores of cases since it was passed.
Yes.
Yes?
Let me explain, and you guys can shoot me down, I'll probably need to be shot. One reason I'm so feisty on this is I've been in this state for 27 years. Maybe it's probably a function of having been born in Berkeley, in a state called California, that I would suggest to you on average is run better than this state. I know that Illinois and Louisiana are among the most corrupt states, at least in terms of the number of governors who've gone to jail. Illinois, when it takes you, we've got like 3 governors in a row who've had to be incarcerated. Louisiana's got a really ugly past. I'll tell you real quick, I was here only 3, 4, 5 years, and I remember hearing, oh, Bob, you even if I could money, this is really great. There's a $2 billion, maybe I'll be here 10 years. There was a $2 billion surplus in the state of New Jersey. All of a sudden, the Republicans were in power in terms of the governorship. All of a sudden, in a matter of weeks, we're going, no, there's not a $2 billion surplus. There's a $2 or $3 billion deficit. These freaking people down in Trenton couldn't even count significant amounts of money. Now, part of it was, as I understand it, that the Republicans, pardon me, I was told, were taking Abbott money, which was designated to go to poor school districts, and they were part of the budget. And they were shifting money that shouldn't have been shifted, so they had a surplus. And then they went, oh, I can't use that Abbott money or something. So one thing I'd be curious to hear, do you think on average New Jersey government is more or less corrupt than the average state in the United States?
I mean, honestly, who cares? Who cares? This is my state. This is the state I live in. It's the only state I have. I don't care whether this state is more or less corrupt than any other state. Frankly, I don't have any standard by which to measure the level of corruption, aside from headlines. What I want are not standards of how to measure corruption. I want standards about how to measure open government. I want standards about how clerks are to behave. I don't want a clerk's response to be idiosyncratic based on the advice that the attorney gives it. Because sometimes the advice is wrong and sometimes it's right. But there's no standard. Same thing with technology. It's completely idiosyncratic. The corruption it's not even relevant.
Counselor, let me say something. That's why I asked the question earlier. I'm not an attorney. I recommend you don't get into a debate with me on the following. I asked this gentleman who represents a member of the state government, and I said, do you know what the state standards are in other states? And he said, I don't know. Well, it's a powerful thing to be able to compare your state, at least on something like this, to another state and say, well, gee, New York, California, Arkansas, whatever, I don't even know, Texas, they have the word shall instead of may. And if you keep your head in the New Jersey sand and only care about what goes on in the state will continue to be one of the laughingstock, the biggest laughingstock state, which does not deserve to be treated this way. It's largely a thing that goes back to the Catskills and was the butt of a lot of jokes. But keep your head in the sand in New Jersey and go look at other states and how they do stuff and be able to compare your state to them and don't care and just remain like, not informed about what Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and New York State are doing so that you can say, there's some states that are doing it worse than we're doing, and we're doing better, and then on other occasions you can say, maybe we can learn something from this other state. And that's why I asked the question fundamentally.
I can sort of respond to some of that.
Please do.
So I work for a newspaper company and I cover areas in 3 states, in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York. They're very different, and the differences between the states are not at all predictable. Okay? Pennsylvania has some of the weakest open government rules, and for the most part, I have to rely on the court system being nice to me. So I show up, for instance, in New Jersey, there are rules that govern serious cases where the police have arrested someone. There's a really nice thing in New Jersey called Executive Order 69 that basically says if anyone is involved in a major incident, they're shot, they're killed, they're seriously harmed, and there's an arrest, within 24 hours, if I call the police and I'm a professional journalist, they have to give me the name, some pedigree information of both the victim and any suspects involved, and basically a sort of short narrative about what happened. New York doesn't have anything close to that, and there's nothing for me to, scream down the other end of the phone at the desk sergeant that doesn't want to give me it. In Pennsylvania, it's even worse. The police won't pick up the phone sometimes. The state police won't pick up the phone. Sometimes the only person, if I need to get a hold of a judge, the only person that I can get actually on the phone and delivering the information is that judge's assistant, because they are, in fact, serving as records custodians a lot of the time, but are also worried about politics and don't want to be commenting on the record to me.
In Pennsylvania, there are elections.
Right. And so it's very tricky. I will also say that although New Jersey is maybe one of the best in those 3 states that I work for, there are states that are far and away superior to it. One of them, in terms of the technology piece and also just quickness and openness, is Florida. If you go right now and you have a family member down in Florida who's been attacked and someone's been arrested, not only can I find usually a statement from police, sometimes it's on their Facebook page. I also, Florida has immediate prisoner registries. So I can find not only the fact that someone might have been arrested in a crime or in relation to a crime, I can also find that person's mugshot. I can find where they're housed, when they were taken, and the bond of that person. New Jersey isn't there. Also, I believe in Florida, data has been classified as a public record. That's something that New Jersey has not done, and it's led to problems because the idea of a public record is challenged in a time when so many public records are stored digitally. So I can't say or lay claim to the K drive on the Lawrence Township business manager's computer as a public document. I would love to be able to, but I just can't do it. And in fact, sometimes when I've received documents that were responses to Oprah requests, I can even get the chain, the tree of servers that it came from.
That tells you a lot of information along the way.
You would think, but it's not helpful yet. And those are some reforms that the technology it has outpaced the people who are responding to the requests from the public for records that technology holds. The technology is able to do it. And things like, even things like dumping are a problem. Not just writing a program and finding your specific string, but convincing IT departments within government agencies that there must be a way to get some generalized dump of data off of the system. I did a story about the internal classification numbers inside the New Jersey State Prison in Trenton, and it took about 5 months for someone to figure out how to sort that information, those scores of inmates, give me
the genders of those inmates, how long they've been incarcerated, where they were housed, and not give me their name. It was a pretty unfantastic result to a very, very long process.
And you found that everything about them except who they are.
Well, they had to anonymize or redact the data.
So, you know, somebody was convicted of murder, and somebody was convicted of bank robbery.
Well, the scores are sort of interesting. They're what internally inside the prison they use to place you. So it's not just that you've murdered somebody, but that you've murdered somebody, that you have behavioral issues, that you have a drinking problem or a history of a drinking problem, and that you have much more time left on your sentence. That person is likely to score a much higher and more dangerous score than an inmate who is maybe charged with the same crime or convicted of the same crime and has less behavioral issues. They'll be treated quite differently, and we were interested in how they were treated. And we had to go through this very long and arduous process of trying to convince that department that, in fact, there must be a way to download the data and to sort it and to give us it in a fashion that was not going to be an unlawful disclosure.
I noticed you were talking down at the end there. Did you want to follow up, either of you, or Walter, or
Oh, no, I gave him a copy of this.
Oh, okay.
An extra.
Do you have any more questions? Yes.
I actually have a question pertaining to this bill we were just discussing. Thank you all for talking with us once again. How would you go about amending a bill that moves more towards the public interest as opposed to the interest of the people who are writing the bill? We see this problem a lot with congressmen talking about term limits, where there's clearly an interest in the public, but not in the people who's writing the bill. So my question is, with a real result, could movement be made to make this transparency bill actually transparent for everybody? Because this is clearly not.
I was just communicating with the legislators. I mean, I really understand the question.
Is there a method, or is there some force of push that would give this bill more direction in the public interest, whereas this amendment that this person's been talking about is clearly in the interest of the state, those who don't want to have to dish out? What kind of force could be put behind it to make this bill suit the public, not those who are writing the amendments?
Got it. I think that the best thing is just to communicate with your legislators.
Scott, I think what he means is, we all know that this new version of the bill is not perfect. It's a better, in certain ways, in other ways maybe not, version than the old bill. So what he's saying is, what would be your ideal bill? Is that closer, maybe? Sure. What provisions would you put in there that would guarantee the information would be made public and so forth?
I mean,
Part of what would really help me out anyway, as far as getting this bill, is to actually be able to have an honest and candid dialogue with the people who oppose the bill. It strikes me that the people who oppose the bill sort of do it like all of a sudden the bill comes out one day and you see their fingerprints all over it, but you don't really ever get to challenge them or quiz them on why these things are important. Maybe they do have reasons why these changes are important. I think what I would like in a perfect world would be that we go to our legislators and we'd say, we know the League of Municipalities has some real problems with this bill, and we understand that they're going to have some problems. They represent the municipalities, and the municipalities, probably aren't as keen on open government as we are. But instead of having them where they go behind the scenes, and now you see me, now you don't, and all of a sudden a bill pops up, and surprise, it's May. How did I get there? Now, can we have a little bit of talk about this? Now, maybe the people who were proponents of that change to May, if they identified themselves publicly and came out and spoke about it, perhaps at a forum like this, could say, well, I'll tell you, Mr. Path, why this is important. We've had all these cases where this happens, and I can identify and give you a list as to exactly why this needs to be made. Well, now you got something. We got something to talk about. But here what seems to happen is it's almost like a stealth bomber coming in. You don't even know you got hit, and all of a sudden you got meg. This isn't legislative people communicating with each other. I mean, we're all stakeholders in this. And it's kind of like somebody with more political power and more access gets involved and pulls the strings, and all of a sudden the carpet's pulled. And the rest of us are scrambling information, and we don't even know even the basics. We're not even told, well, I don't think there's anybody bigger stakeholders in this, or at least we talk about it more than anybody else. The people sitting up here, but I can tell you none of us saw this before the thing hit, before it was already
Also,
done deal.
people in the audience here are, many of them are journalism majors, and they'll be out, you know, pounding the streets in a year or two, looking for the same sort of information. And they'll want that bill to be as strong as possible, I imagine.
And one thing you'll look at too, which is you look through these bills, you'll see sentences, a lot of them that say, except for the legislature, they can do this. The rest of the people have to do this. There's different rules for the legislature as far as transparency and openness. The legislature creates a rule, it makes different rules for the legislature itself than it does for the rest of the, and that's true, you have to say. I'm not really sure why that is, because it's kind of hard. I mean, I don't know, and I don't want to put on a libertarian my cynical hat here, but I live in a district, most of the that's controlled by one party and has been for a whole lot of years. We don't really have elections as much for state assembly and Senate assemblies. We really just have a coronation of whoever the predetermined pick is by the political party that happens to run that district. So, against that backdrop, I guess about all I can really do is go to my legislators and I want to lower the boom on it. I'm not going to vote for you. Well, they're going to get elected. Their party's always going to put the people in that they want to be put in. So I don't really know how meaningful, I guess, and this is pretty cynical, but how meaningful the entire legislative process is when you have that kind of, and when you say go talk to your legislator, I'm not really sure how much the legislator really listens to one individual who doesn't have, you know, some people matter more than others, I think, in the state legislature. And I kind of got a feeling I'm one of the people who don't matter a whole lot. But, no, it's true. It's true. But what I'm saying is that it's hard, you know, it's like with Congress. It's hard when you have a approval rate of, 16% of people approving, and you have 96% of the same people get reelected again. It goes to show something about the state of democracy, and this all is part of the legislative process, is part of it. It depends upon the people's vote being important. I'm not really sure how much that is when all the things are tied up and sewn up, and people hardly even have to have elections anymore because the winners are usually predetermined.
Scott, John just, in essence, raised this question. Do you know who called for that change from shall to may, and when it was made, and who was the front advocate for it? Because it was not in the versions that were publicized by Senator Weinberg. And then in the substitute, which came before the Senate on this stealth bomb which I just referenced, it was. Do you know who did that?
Yeah, what happened was we were approached by the ACLU and the League of Municipalities. What they did was they got together and they suggested compromise language and said, hey, here's something that we can work with.
The ACLU suggested this?
Absolutely, and came to us with these compromise language and said,
For what reason would the ACLU want this language?
I know, ask Tom McLeod, he's here.
Yeah. Because why? What was that, John?
Tom McLeod, you're with the ACLU, right, Tom? Maybe you could shed some light on why the ACLU would back the language and change shall to may? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I believe this was, well, sorry.
You know, the language from shall to may is something that we really is it when we get it.
Just to go forward.
The language from shall to may was something, a compromise that we were willing to live with in order to gain some other aspects of the bill.
What were the gains in having listened to it? What were the gains in having listened to this? Did you revise that notion? You still satisfied with what's happening? What are the benefits? It sounds pretty crappy. Tonight, I don't like it, and I like the ACLU. I don't
You know, there are a lot of aspects of the bill.
Give us three. Give us three aspects. As a citizen advocate who's worked for the last 10 years, and who continuously has to avoid using OPMA because the costs of going to court are so high as an individual, and month after month, I see my municipality commit violation after violation after violation, and there's nothing that I can do about it. Please give me 3 reasons why you think that we will benefit from having that, getting that language changed.
At least one. What the other benefits are?
One of the benefits is a great improvement in the notice requirement for what constitutes adequate notice under the bill.
Adequate public notice?
Sorry?
Adequate public notice?
Yes. Yeah, that was greatly strengthened and improved in the bill. The inclusion of subcommittees is another great inclusion in the bill. Subcommittees have to meet certain of the requirements of the bill that previously we did not have.
You're totally over my head. I don't understand what you're talking about.
So subcommittees of a larger body were previously not subject to any of the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act. Presently, they are now going to be required to provide notice of their meetings.
If the bill passes.
If the bill passes.
And the governor has to sign this?
And the governor has to
Do
sign
you know where he stands on this?
Are you talking about the Open Public Meetings Act? I thought we were talking about the Open Public Records Act.
They both have the same language.
But all
And we
these
have to
changes.
keep in mind that, as Walter said earlier, that there was actually no efficiency provision in the Open Public Meetings Act prior to the current language.
But even if these extra requirements are passed, what difference does it make if you don't have the wherewithal in court to fight it? Like, I can't get, it's hard enough to get an attorney to represent me pro bono as a journalist now, but if they can't get fees, if you know, the judge isn't going to award fees, I'm not even going to challenge them. It's hard enough as it is now.
The violations under OPA are so potent throughout the state that the loss of that mandatory shall, I think, is way greater than what we will probably get. And I think there is a real, one of the things that I see here is there's a real difference between talking about the law in a theoretical way and talking about the laws in a practical way. So those of us who are really in the trenches regularly, month to month, and Crystal down there who's regularly as a journalist, a professional journalist who's constantly in the trenches, and I don't know about you, we will feel that change dramatically. I'm not sure the ACLU is in the trenches the way some of us citizen advocates. In some ways you are, but when it comes to open government and transparency, I don't think that the ACLU has the kind of track record that many of us citizen advocates, citizen activists like John Paff has, and this is going to be a serious, it's really the only club we've had.
They're not in the trenches in the same way because these lawyers don't get salaries like the ACLU people have, and I can't depend on the ACLU to represent me. I mean, they're overwhelmed as it is, and I've had, sometimes I've called, this is before this lawyer was the lawyer, but I've called and 3 months later still not gotten a response.
Well,
Yeah.
sorry, Mike, I just want to
And
say
it
one
doesn't
thing.
have anything to do with profit motive.
You're entitled, the ACLU certainly is entitled to its opinion, but when, there's something that rubs me a little bit, or galls me a little bit, when you said we got together and we decided that we could live with this compromise. Well, you're not the only we in the room here. See, I got a stake in this too. And I think I would have liked it an awful lot better if the ACLU would have said, hey, John, hey, Walter, this is what we were thinking of floating here, you know, what do you think about that? Or even, this is what we're going to do, we don't care if you like it or not, we're just informing you. But there's something just a little bit bad, in my mind, a little galling, that you guys take it upon yourself to represent the entire open government community and make a deal pretty much behind everybody's back.
And by the way, does the league support the amendments in their current form? Does the league municipalities support the amendments in their current form?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
As far as I know, they do not.
They do not.
So what did we get out of this? What did we get out of this giveaway? We got nothing, zero.
Tom, let me give you a perspective.
When I negotiate something, when I give something away, I usually try to get something from the other side. And then the league is still opposing these bills.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't think the Foundation for Open Government was consulted on this at all.
And Tom, let me give you a perspective from somebody who is a card-carrying member of the ACLU. I've been one since 1990. Word gets out that you guys gutted the Open Public Meetings and Open Public Record Act in a sneaky compromise with the legislature. And contributions are going to take a hit. It was a dumb thing to do for the ACLU. He's not
Well,
responsible.
with all due respect, you're entitled to your opinion, and we're going to have to respectfully disagree about your second part.
This is only the second time in my adult life, which spans more than 40 years, and I don't even know because it's all new to me. Only the second time in my life when I come to defense of the ACLU. Only the second time in my life when I've been dubious about anything with the ACLU. Normally I'm a good knee-jerk liberal, and I support and like almost every decision and involvement that the ACLU has ever had. So this is that counterintuitive to me. But I want to ask a question, particularly because we're journalism and media studies people. And again, I'm a foreigner apparently because I came from out of state. This is only one of 2 or 3 states. This is a theory I've worked with since the first weeks I moved to the state. There may be another couple states, but New Jersey is extraordinarily odd. And it can't help itself because we're between 2 big media markets in Philadelphia and New York. A lot of students who grew up here maybe never thought about it. Kansas City, St. Louis, Memphis, they all have an ABC, NBC, CBS affiliate there. Now, I don't like commercial local news for the most part. It sucks, okay? But it's better than having nothing. And I've seen things go down in this state where I think if we had, besides New Jersey Network, which most people never watch, and they can barely find it on their dial because they're just not tuned into PBS. If we had anything like even remotely vigorous commercial local news that were affiliates of NBC, ABC, or CBS, there are things that have gone down in the state that wouldn't have gone down because more people would have been aware because they would have listened to some anchors at 11 o'clock who said, look what President Lawrence said down in Camden the other day. Now, Lawrence said something some years ago, it's a couple presidents ago, that in some states, they would have tarred and feathered him practically and run him out of town. But not enough people knew the very problematic, arguably racist thing that he said. He didn't mean to say it, but he was enough I mean, he's the president of his university, but it was in over his head, sorry, and I would tell that to his face if he was here. And he got a lot of hot water for something he said about how, well, what are you going to do in terms of admitting students in a state, like, he was trying to say the right thing, like New Jersey, where we have a diverse racial makeup. Well, what are you going to do when we admit students to the university if they're a group of people, he was referring to African Americans, who cannot score as well on these tests? He said something like that, right? He took a lot of heat, but I'm telling you, in some other states, he would have gone down.
He did eventually.
Huh?
He did eventually.
Yeah, but some years later, but years later when McGreevey became governor and word got to Lawrence it was going down because McGreevey had become governor and he thought, okay, I better resign before McGreevey takes my head off. Not that McGreevey was any tough, that's a real either. But, I mean, I'm really curious, I'm just curious, let me back up here. You guys are much more experienced, you follow New Jersey politics. I don't. I really don't. Do you think it's possible we have a more vigorous government and debate in this state if we had? I mean, most states have local television news from. Would we be any better
if we had one central TV group of TV stations?
No, I'm saying ABC, like Memphis, Kansas City, St. Louis, Dallas, Tucson. They all have it pretty much. And ABC.
We have them, but they're all out of state, you said.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have an ABC or NBC or CBS affiliate anywhere in the state. And maybe 2 other states that are like that. We're like 1 out of 2 or 3 out of 50 states, as far as I know. And we can't help it. You've got to have a lot of bucks. to have a television station in Newark by itself. So we don't have a, we're caught between Philadelphia and New York. And so also to run a campaign in the States, some of you don't know, you often got to buy New York or Philadelphia advertising time, or you can't communicate with the state. And so it's really expensive, considering the state doesn't have any local affiliated television.
So putting this all together, you're saying that if we did have this, there might have been a chance of having more scrutiny of this bill.
Well, not this bill, because this bill would, local news would never cover this bill probably, because local news is mostly just terribly thin. And but on other issues, like when Lawrence put his foot in his mouth and other things, yeah, I think there are times when the state, the citizens would know more about what the hell's going on in this.
I agree with you that if we were eclipsed in New Jersey by the media, the interest, the stuff that's of interest in New York and Philadelphia media typically isn't New Jersey. It's usually what goes on in their own cities. So I think that you're probably right that had we had this all along, it would have probably made some sort of a difference. It's hard to calculate how much. But I think that as time goes on, starting now would make less of a difference because of so many different alternate ways in which people get their information. You know, not through network news. I don't know anybody.
They have to be interested in search for it. What's nice about a local
people are still
channel, as bad as
interested.
it may be, if someone finishes watching, you know, some murder CSI show from 10 to 11, and they, you know, they fell asleep on the couch, whatever. They woke up and they go, and there's some local anchor, woman or man, who's saying, "Look what happened in Camden. Look what happened at Rutgers today." And you go, "Yeah, look what happened."
I think that that's true, and I think that a lot of people, citizens in New Jersey, probably know more about Mayor Bloomberg than you do about local things that are going on, just because, especially in Teaneck, where the news coverage is dominated by things that are going on in New York City, rather than things that are happening in New Jersey. You also see, you know, some news organizations will have like one reporter covering all of New Jersey, you know, but they will have, you know, many reporters covering New York and media markets. So I think as Benjamin Franklin, I first described New Jersey as that, as a K, which I'm support, that a K tapped at both ends. You know, where you have Philadelphia in the south and New York in the north, without a central, you know, media or, you know, central media, we just have to turn like between the two large cities. So I think that Mr. Pat is correct in which, as online news grows, you know, people get different sources of information, you know, hopefully the network news will know less, but I think it's not yet, and even if people still know more about Mayor Bloomberg than they do about, you know, things going on here in New Jersey.
Yeah, this is a real technology question because what you have is traditionally in New Jersey, the vacuum that was created by having these TV stations in New York and Philadelphia was picked up by the newspapers in New Jersey. The newspapers in New Jersey were quite a bit better in their day than the local newspapers in other states. But we all know what's happened to the newspaper industry. It's greatly weakened, and it makes it much more difficult for people in New Jersey to get the news. The newspapers are weak. They don't have the central TV station. They're really left to, you know, a couple blogs and websites, and which makes it more difficult.
I'd like to say something else just that came to mind is that, you know, obviously there's more citizen journalists, so to speak, and you can start a blog or something like that and report the news. And I believe it was Governor Christie took a baseball game to his son's, his helicopter to his son's baseball game. And it was like a local, you know, high school sports reporter that actually captured it all on video and had pictures of it. So here you see the citizen journalist just being there and having the technology of, you know, mobile phone or whatever, actually, you know, reporting breaking news. I thought that was very interesting.
That was a lucky grab. I mean, let's see if that guy's going to be at the police at midnight picking up reports and things that you really have to pay somebody to do.
I recently spoke with Paul Starr, who teaches down in Princeton. He also won a Pulitzer Prize in 1984 for a big book on the healthcare industry. He has since written a book about the history of media. He testified at the state hearings on the transfer of the public TV station and radio station in the state. And he was very critical of the decision to divide the state's radio licenses in half, essentially, with the northern half going to New York and the southern half going to Philadelphia.
And the fact that NJN, the television station, survived because it's kind of a joke. There's very little viewership for NJN. And really, when you think about it, New Jersey is perfect for radio. It is a commuter state. We're in our cars, we're on the train. And it would have served New Jersey's native purposes greater to have had a statewide radio network to go along with the localized newspaper products. But unfortunately, we don't have that.
Josh, can I follow up? So I'll tell you, as a professor of journalism and media studies, and I don't believe I ever had you as a student, I have been proud listening to this panel how good you are. You have
I
distinguished
taught him everything. And all those big words he
But
used.
you've got a bunch of people here for whom you can be a role model more than these other white men. Okay? And
We originally had 2 women on the panel.
I know that, but they didn't show up for whatever good or bad. But Josh, what, just in a nutshell, you're quick and you're smart, and I'm totally proud of the fact that you're one of our graduates. Tell your fellow students or your, what should they be thinking about most as journalism and media studies students? Of course, what they do, what do they got to do to become you, to get a job?
Work real hard. It's hard to say. Okay, so you have your work cut out for you. New Jersey is totally interesting. It's filled with honey holes of journalism. You just got to find them. And hopefully, I've had the good luck of, casting a wide net and finding some very good people to work for. And I think that there are people in media out there, especially now, who are looking for a good deal on a nice report. Okay? If you can write with confidence, if you can gain trust, if you're fast, if you're good at interviewing, if you're organized, all that stuff. If you can shoot video and do photography when you're out covering, that helps immensely. If you are web savvy, if you can code anything, if you can build graphics, if you can build animations, all of that stuff, that is going to leverage your career greatly. It's something that I've considered coming back to school to learn more about. But our job, I think my job and the job of a reporter is going this way with skills, okay? It's not one skill and it's not just being there. Showing up is a big deal, but it's competence first and then intelligence.
Could someone be an intern with you?
With
Someone
me,
shadow you?
I don't know. I certainly,
Let's find a way.
I don't know. You have to come up to like Sussex County. It's incredibly Republican, rural area of New Jersey, 45 minutes away. If you're not afraid of doing that, sure, I'll leave my number out there.
Some of my best friends.
Well, I'm just saying it's a unique part of the state. There's nothing unusual about it. It's equally kind of crazy and interesting. So I, invite you guys if you're interested. I don't know.
It's one of the more suburban parts of New Jersey.
I don't know if I can offer any opportunity.
Okay, if we could just maybe finish with one more question. There was a time when people's names, addresses, phone numbers, and later email addresses were in the public domain. They were on public records. But now we have identity theft, and the legislators are always afraid this information is going to be used somehow. Where's the middle ground, or does one exist to satisfy the public's right to know and privacy concerns?
As far as social security numbers, I get that. I understand why they have to be confidential. There is a real risk of identity theft and things like that. And I think a lot of that is solved by just putting a few of the digits, the last 4 of the social security number, or the bank account number, the last 4 of it. One of the things that I've run across is that governments will sometimes take the entire number out especially with the bank account numbers, you can't even identify which bank accounts. You can't distinguish. They give you two reports, and there's two redacted bank account numbers in their entirety. You're not given the last 4 digits, so you don't know if they're from the same bank account or from different accounts. And I think that those types of numbers can be, those identifiers, unique identifier numbers. Same with New Jersey driver's license numbers, I can see that. I don't see that with, I think when you get into dates of birth, I don't think it's as big of a deal. A license plate number of a car, maybe. I'm not sure. That's one of the things.
Home address.
Home address, I think, is a little, in my mind, silly. I know that every property owner, and at least all the people that own properties, you can go to one of many databases and get, anybody can put my last name Path in and go look at Franklin Township, you'll know where I live. Because I'm the only person named Path in the township, and I got an address and I pay taxes there.
Maybe a model for what the technology needs to look like in the future, because county property tax or property records and tax maps in New Jersey are pretty easy to use.
Yeah,
you can find anybody.
I had a big dust up with the Attorney General about 6 months back because the Attorney General's always called me, which was a little odd, because I had placed on my blog a thing about a police officer who had gotten involved in some drunken driving thing and trying to get out of it using by virtue of the fact he was a police officer, which is typical. And I had placed a record online that I had received from the town. I think it was Berkeley Township, Ocean County, if I remember who serves, and it had his home address in there. And the Attorney General was absolutely incensed that I was exposing his home address to the world because, of course, they were worried about the officer and his family's safety. And I remember they were trying to get me to take it down, and I was telling them not. And it occurred to me that the officer had a pretty unique name. And he went through the search, and he went through the southern counties in New Jersey and looked for his name, and he searched it through the that's njactb.org at the County Tax Board Association. You'd find out where they lived. You'd find out the very same information that I had on my blog. So it's kind of hard for me to understand how people are really, really upset over somebody's home address being out there when it's generally available on all these tax maps. So somebody has to convince me of that. And as far as email addresses go, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm getting back to home addresses. One of the big controversies going on right now is those nasty lawyers. Every time you get a traffic ticket or you get a speeding ticket or you get involved in an accident, you start getting all these letters from these lawyers trying to solicit your business. They say, we need a lawyer. Well, that's not, I mean, so what? You get a letter from a lawyer. Is it that big of a thing? I mean, it's not like they're coming to your door and knocking and looking in your windows. They're sending you a letter. I mean, do we have to be so hypersensitive to any kind of contact from the outside world that we want to, you know, can't you just throw the letter away?
See, John, that thing in that paper in New York State that revealed all these people, it's in the public domain, the people who own guns. And I got to tell you, I sympathize with these people who own guns and the people who didn't own guns. But that newspaper reported. That newspaper took a lot of heat, maybe it was improper, but if I was a gun owner or not a gun owner, I don't want people going, oh, that guy probably doesn't have a gun, or that guy does have a gun. I mean, maybe what's legal and what's right and moral and appropriate are two different things.
Well, it was in public domain anyway.
Yeah, but you guys are thinking like journalism professor. Yeah, it's public domain anyway, but it's not in a newspaper with the list of the people's freaking names. There's a difference.
I think there's public and then there's sort of semi-public, where the stuff is there, but it's sort of buried, and it only takes somebody who's got a little smarts about how to use records and so on to ferret it out. Otherwise, it could stay there for years. And this is what in the class I teach, I'm always telling students to go look through, you know, just go online, you can get yourself a good investigative story. You just pour through some of these databases.
I suppose I could start quite a stir. I mean, there's public information people kind of think is probably in the category of wrong, like divorce filings, complaints that wives file against husbands, and they might contain all kinds of information as far as what the allegations are. And I suppose somebody that really wanted to could go down to Middlesex County Family Court and get like 100 divorce cases and take all the complaints and put them up on the internet. I'm sure that would fix some people's lives. But the thing is, well, what's the remedy to the fact that somebody might do that? Now say that nobody can look at anything, can't look at your files anymore? You see, those are some of the struggles. That's what we have to look at. What we have are these practically obscure records that like divorce files. Somebody's got to go down and know what they're looking for, pull it out. And it used to be that the worst I could do if I really wanted the laundry was to take and make 25 copies of the thing and staple the telephone poles all around somebody's neighborhood. And I would never do that. If somebody wanted to do that, that's what they do. But now we have instantaneous access to putting something on a blog that isn't going to just be there right away and widely distributed. It's going to be there forever. That'll never die. That thing will always be there. So it does raise some concerns. And I do sympathize with someone who maybe had an arrest back in 1978 that all of a sudden was pretty much forgotten about. And now it's out there for everybody to look at again and again and again. But I don't think that the answer to that is just taking and shutting down the courthouse
I would
doors.
say the answer the journalist might use better judgment on occasion.
Yeah, the Journal News case is reflective of what you're both saying. In that case, it was those fiscal permits prior to publication in the newspaper were considered a public record. However, the ease with which those records could be used and placed online and publicized, made popular by the newspaper, changed the nature of its being public into kind of, look who we have here. You might call that targeted. It's a fine line, and I agree with your sentiments about the sensitivity, the difference between a public record and a publicized one. Right. But what John is saying about closing the court record actually happened in New York. Those pistol permit documents are no longer a public record, and our newspaper company actually fashioned a FOIL request, they call it in New York, to receive similar information about gun owners in our county so that we could identify them, speak with them about their guns, how secure are they, how many do you have, are you willing to speak with us about gun ownership in our county? We can't even do that anymore. It's taken from us, it's sealed. And I think that I would agree with John that there's a step backward that happened because of the fallout of the Journal News' sort of overpublication of that.
Okay, well, does anyone have any last words before we close for the night? It's getting to be 9 o'clock.
Could I ask a question? Could you all talk about the 2010 amendment to the Oprah law as it affected fees? I think that was just for paper copies. And whether or not there is a requirement to use a governmental entity's prescribed form for requesting information, and if not, what you have to put in an email so that it will suffice.
All you have to put in an email to the municipal clerk is, I want to have the following records, something in accordance with the Public Records Act, Oprah, and anything that reasonably resembles a record request is going to be treated as a record request by the government custodian. You don't use their forms. If you want to use their forms, it's nice if you like to do that, but I don't. And as far as the changing of the fees, we went from 75 cents a page for the first 10 pages and went down to a quarter a page. I think that's what it used to be. It is now a nickel a page instead of 75 cents a page, and that's a pretty big deal. Except that has been rendered somewhat less important by the fact that a lot of these agencies now typically send you the records via email where you don't have to pay anything for them. So I always found the fees, even with the nickel, it's not really paying the nickel a copy, it's being billed for the nickel a copy. Having to write them a check for 45 cents, mailing it to them, and having to go through the whole rigmarole and extra week it packs under the process of actually having to make this 45-cent transaction, because God forbid any of these guys will take any credit cards or do anything the way the rest of the world operates. Because you got to remember, government agencies still treat this whole internet thing as sort of like a new thing, But it's just that generally, though, I find that if I ask for records electronically, I almost always get them electronically, so they're free.
Okay, well, with that, I think our time is up, and we thank you all. Don't forget on your way out to make a right turn and get a piece of paper.
I mean, I would say that.
Some of my students